Hey, yesterday the White House issued several really important executive orders, several of them dealing with increased mobilization and deployment of the National Guard in our cities. I'm here in Times Square. We could easily anticipate the National Guard being deployed by Donald Trump under his command in New York very soon, maybe after Chicago shortly. Much to be worried about there. But what I want to talk about today is a different executive order, one that addresses or demands the increased prosecution, criminal prosecution of people for flag burning the United States flag as a form of political protest. The administration has issued this order saying how wonderful the flag is, what an important symbol it is of our nation, of course it is, and that the Attorney General should step up with everything she's got to prosecute flag burning, particularly in cases where that flag burning incites a reaction or is likely to incite a reaction from others that is violent or imminently lawless. What I want to point out about this executive order is not that it's blatantly unconstitutional, which it is, but instead, they don't care about that, but instead, the part it plays in teasing the court, inviting the Supreme Court to play a significant role in advancing the project of white Christian nationalism. Now, let me explain why. Of course, the nationalism piece is easy to understand, given that this is an order having to do with the burning of the United States flag. But why Christian and racial issues? What I think is up here is that conservatives, extreme ones, who put the current Supreme Court together with the extreme majority that it has, have a project of using the law, using the Constitution to protect certain types of speech and rights and render other speech and rights invisible, or worse, render you vulnerable to persecution from the state. So in 1992, there was a decision from Justice Scalia from the Supreme Court having to do with a white young man who burned a cross on the lawn of a black family in Minnesota. He was convicted under a local statute that made it a hate crime to burn a cross with an intent to scare, intimidate, terrorize a black family. And the Supreme Court, Justice Scalia, writing for the court, invalidated that statute and his conviction, saying that you cannot target certain types of speech for criminal regulation, even if that speech is likely to incite violence from others or amount to fighting words. That's exactly what this executive order does. But this Supreme Court's not going to overrule that case, RAV. So the current First Amendment protects extreme racist speech, therefore advancing the project of white nationalism. And then a couple of years ago, we had a decision from the court in a case called 303 Creative versus Alanis, where there was a woman who designed websites who did not want to build a website for a same-sex couple who was going to get married because of her religious beliefs about marriage being an institution, a sacrament between one man and one woman. She challenged the ordinance, the law in Colorado that prohibited her from discriminating against customers on the basis of sexual orientation because she said complying with the law forced her to speak a message she did not agree with. She didn't say that it violated her faith. She didn't make a religious liberty claim. She made a free speech claim that a law that regulated her business and said you can't discriminate on the basis of race, sex, sexual orientation, other things, forced her, compelled her to speak a message that is the official state message. Well, that's exactly what this flag burning executive order is doing too. It forces people to revere the flag all in the same way, and those who don't revere the flag in the way that Donald Trump does can be prosecuted. But she won in the 303 Creative case, where the court held that the First Amendment's free speech protections prohibited the state from forcing her, through the design of a website, etc., from speaking a message she disagreed with. Even if that the basis of her disagreement was religious, that wasn't important to that case. So we're seeing the development of a kind of white Christian nationalism bolstered by the Supreme Court, where extremely racist things like burning crosses gain free speech protection. Discriminating against same-sex couples cannot be prohibited by law, because otherwise you're forcing a business owner to speak a message she doesn't agree with, therefore violating her free speech rights. And at least for now, we can't prohibit people from burning a flag and using the criminal laws to punish it, because that is a kind of sacred, if you will, form of speech. But if this executive order makes its way to the Supreme Court, and I imagine it will in the next couple of years, I think there's a very good chance that the court will say that burning the flag is not protected speech. So you have a kind of white Christian nationalist agenda being bolstered by this conservative Supreme Court's approach to speech, political speech, and government power in ways that are unprecedented. So keep an eye on this flag burning ordinance and where it goes when it gets challenged, and I'm certain it will.